What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides video. I'm Kangas, and today we're talking about 5 sleeper OP picks and builds that you should be abusing for some free LP. You probably already know the popular OP picks and builds since they're all over social media, including our own YouTube channel, but in this video, we're looking at some of the lesser known builds today. First of those we're talking about is Kled Mid. Kled Top has made our 3 champs to main list pretty much forever. Being both a hard carry and a form of engage means that he fits into pretty much every team comp, but rarely do we talk about him in the mid lane. And it's something that we absolutely should be telling you to play. Everything that makes Kled a good top laner also makes him a great mid laner. One issue with the current mid lane meta is that most matchups are incredibly volatile. There also aren't many hard winning matchups, it's just 2 high damage assassins where the lane is decided by who makes the first mistake. And once you're down a single kill in a melee versus melee matchup, it's pretty much impossible to fight your way back into the game without being bailed out by your team. So instead of worrying about winning those skill matchups, Kled gives you a hard counter where you always have the upper hand. Kled trades a lot harder than other champs that play mid, so anytime they move up to trade or even just try to get some CS, you can punish them hard. An issue with a lot of the non-assassin champions is that even if you bully an assassin pre-level 6, once they have their ult, they can just 100-0 you. But Kled has that covered as well. He is an insanely beefy champion and can easily survive an assassin's full combo while still building his normal damage items. Now, before you just head into solo queue, lock Kled mid, and fight to death level 1, you need to know that Kled isn't actually that mindless despite the lore. Level 1, you can trade a little bit if you land your Q, but he really isn't able to commit to fights until level 3. Your Q and E work together to give sticking power, while W gives you a huge boost to your auto damage. For that reason, you also don't want to level up W right away. Just hold the skill up point until you successfully land your Q and E onto your opponent, and then level it up. So here's the build you're running. For runes, you'll take Conqueror, Triumph, Alacrity or Tenacity, Last Stand, Absolute Focus, and Gathering Storm, with the stat runes being double Adaptive Force and either Armor or Magic Resistance. For your items, you want to start with a Doran's Blade, and then build straight into a Gore Drinker, Steel Caps, and Titanic Hydra. Up next, you go Black Cleaver, Sterix Gauge, and Stone Plate. That's a pretty standard cookie cutter build, but obviously you can make different itemization choices. Against an AP champion, go Merc Treads and maybe pick up an early Hex Drinker. Versus an AD heavy team, you can grab a Thornmail and or Randuin's in your last slot. Now, part of what makes sleeper OP picks so successful is the fact that nobody plays them. Objectively speaking, they may not be better than or even as good as most popular picks, but when your opponents don't know how to play against them, you get that extra edge in a fight. But that alone isn't quite enough to win you all of your solo queue games. You also have to have the skills to get those early leads and to know how to use those leads to win your games. And that's where we come in. At ProGuides.com, our top tier coaches are available 24/7 to help you with all your needs. They've grinded solo queue to reach the top of the ladder, and now they want to share everything that they know with you. So if you're really serious about climbing, head on over and check them out. Now, the second pick we have for you is Graves in a solo lane. Despite him being relatively popular in high elo solo queue, I really hate seeing people pick Lucian top and mid. The champion can bully hard and has the potential to snowball, but he has to be played so aggressively to actually reach that potential. He's often heavily camped, and once behind, he's then totally useless. In my opinion, Graves does everything that people want to do with Lucian, but he does it safer, better, and most importantly, he does it consistently. There's a ton of different builds that people do with him, but at the end of the day, the general idea is the same. So first, let's talk about his lane phase. Graves has some really solid trading, able to do both burst damage and consistent DPS. He's also relatively tanky thanks to the armor from his E, so you don't have to be scared of overcommitting by dashing in. Aside from trading with the enemy champions, he also gives you great priority in lane. Everyone should know that Graves has really good wave clear, and I think we've all had a Graves jungle help push the lane or just tax the entire wave in just a couple of seconds. So this means that you can always shove waves and look to roam and put pressure elsewhere. Whether that's helping your jungler secure a Scuttle Crab, looking to gank in another lane, or just trying to get some deeper vision. As the game goes on and you stack up more and more armor pen, you become a one-shotting machine. Your combo does an insane amount of burst damage, but it's not like you're just some bursty AD mage. Remember, you're a marksman too. At close range, where all the pellets from your gun hits the target, Graves can erase other squishy carries with just a couple of auto attacks. So now let's talk about your build options. There are 2 rune pages that people run, and both are pretty solid choices, so it's just a matter of preference and playstyle. The first page is Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Nimbus Cloak, and Water Walking, with double Adaptive Force and either Armor or Magic Resist. This page has an emphasis on roaming and bursting down squishier targets. The second page is Fleet Footwork, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor or MR. This page is more about play to farm up and having more consistent DPS later on. But regardless of your runes, you'll usually go for the same build. Start with Doran's Blade, then build into Eclipse, and either Steel Caps or Merc Dreads. After that, go for Collector and Lord Dominic's Regards for a combination of huge armor pen and hard-hitting crits. Then go for Infinity Edge and top things off with a situational item like Bloodthirster or Mortal Reminder. Next up on our list is Ahri Support. She's a really cheesy pick that will catch lots of people off guard, especially if you're played in low diamond or anything under that. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I often support and even encourage cheese picks in solo queue because, hey, LP is LP no matter how you get it. Though she's not at all a traditional champion in the role, Ahri Support makes a lot of sense in the current meta. For one, most of the popular supports are ranged and squishy champions, so playing a typical melee kill lane into those champions can work if you get the chance to go in for a trade, but oftentimes they just shove you in early and you never get to dig yourself out of that hole unless you get some jungle help. But as Ahri, since you're range 2, you are not susceptible to the early game bullying. In fact, Ahri provides a lot more wave clear than any other support thanks to her Q, so you're actually able to help your AD carry shove the other bot lane under their tower instead. And that is where the fun begins. Once minions are out of the way, you're free to look for charms on the enemy bot lane. Even when they're under the tower, landing a charm allows you to chunk them out, especially if your AD carry is poised to help too. And landing it in the middle of the lane is basically a guaranteed kill on a squishy champion. And of course, once you level 6, your kill potential skyrockets even more. Every matchup will have to be played differently, of course, but as long as you're decent at landing skill shots, you should be able to force constantly when your ult is up. And out of lane, since you don't exactly have a solo laner's income, you'll focus on providing utility and catching more than just being an assassin. So that's reflected in the build that we have for you right here. For your runes, you'll run Glacial Augment, Magical Footwear, Biscuit Delivery, Cosmic Insight, Mana Flow, and Transcendence, with the stat runes being double Adaptive Force and Armor. For your items, since you're a little mana heavy, you'll actually start Relic Shield, then rush Lucidity Boots, and build Everfrost for your Mythic. Then you can go Zonias, so you can go aggressively forward for Charms, and then Cosmic Drive and Vigilant Wardstone if you have the economy for it. Now, another very slept-on champion currently in the meta is Skarner Jungle. Skarner used to make our list pretty often, but he's been so far under the radar that we even forgot about him there for a bit. I guess it's just that so many other champions were more popular in the chem tank-fueled speed demon jungle meta, and then once the item was nerfed, we completely forgot about the champs that built it. The thing is, Skarner is just built for winning solo queue. I mean, think about it. How many times have you been winning a lane just for an important carry to get caught out? With that one pick, the enemy team takes Baron, then an inhib, and suddenly you're staring at a defeat screen. Skarner is perfect for making picks just like that, so he's never going to just roll over and die as a pick. With Ghost and Chem Tank available, it's as simple as having your team group up and then pulling the trigger. All that said though, remember that we're in the early game jungle meta, so you won't be able to outpressure the other junglers in the first few levels. It's important that you path well so you can get level 6 as fast as possible and start influencing the lanes. But being bad at ganking does not mean that you're bad at fighting. When it comes to dueling, he is one of the stronger champions in the role as long as you're fighting on one of his spires. So with that in mind, don't back down from a Scuttle Crab fight, unless the enemy laners are going to have a say in things. Being able to resist getting bullied off camps is crucial to any scaling champion in the current meta. Now for the build. For runes, the standard setup is Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, Water Walking, Triumph, and Tenacity, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For your items, go Hailblade, Turbo Chem Tank, Lucidity Boots, Deadman's Plate, and Force of Nature. With that core done, your last two items are just dependent on your game's needs. Some options are Thornmail, Randuin's, Stoneplate, and Frozen Heart. Otherwise, Abyssal Mask is a good option if you want to give your team more damage on your target when you lock them down with your ult. But if you want more carrying power, you can actually go for a Conqueror Page instead. Along with a Keystone, you'll be bringing Triumph, Alacrity, or Tenacity, Last Stand, Nimbus Cloak, and Celerity, with the stat runes again being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. When you do that page, you may as well build damage items as well, so you'll want to pick up Hailblade for its sticking power, and then build into a Divine Sunderer as your mythic. Then pick up either Steel Cap, Merc Treads, or Lucidity Boots, and then go for Syrinx Gauge, Deadman's Plate, Force of Nature, and a last item of your choice. Just note that you will have a lot less speed with the carry build, but you will still have Ghost and Blue Smite to help you stick to targets. Now, while Skarner may have survived the gutting of Chemtank, most of the other champions from the meta are pretty bad now. I don't know about you, but I can't even recall the last time I saw a Volibear or an Udyr in my games, and the last Hecarim I did see was pretty rough. Hitting one item so hard massively shakes up the meta's ecosystem, making an entire class of champions weak at once also indirectly buffs other champions that they counter. And that brings us to today's question of the day. What do you think is the best way to balance the game? I know that's a really vague question, but what I mean is, do you think it's best for Riot to focus most of their changes on just champions themselves, or the items, runes, and systems that they utilize? Or do you just think it's better for them to buff weaker things rather than nerfing OP things? Whether your answer is one of those, some mix of them, or none of the above, let us know down in the comments below. And now finishing off our list, we have a very rare but strong AD carry in Kindred. Looking at overall stats, Kindred AD carry has a negative win rate, but when you narrow the search to higher elos, it starts to go up just like Kindred jungle. And when you specifically look at high elo in Korea, it's even higher. Even if it's a small sample size, a champion around 58% win rate in their Korean Diamond plus solo queue has to mean something. Well, let's look at what Kindred brings to the table. For one, they're a really strong duelist. We already know that from their role in the jungle. Despite being a hyper-scaling AD carry, they have the mobility and early game damage that you need to actively commit to fights, and they actually want to skirmish often. In the bot lane, this means that they pair super well with aggressive supports. They will definitely scale well with enchanters too, but it's really crucial that you get stacks on Kindred. No matter how fed you are, you need the bonus range that you get every few stacks to actually put out your damage from a safer distance. So if you do end up with a more passive support, you'll call for your jungler to gank or even dive to ensure that you get your stacks rolling in early. On top of their strong early game and scaling, Kindred is also a very safe team fighter. Their Q has a super low cooldown as long as you're using it in the W zone, and when mobility isn't enough, they also have their ult. Like Kindred jungle, you'll want to evade for stacks, so try to set up a 1-3-1 with your team after lane phase. If you're planted mid, you should have more chances to invade camps as opposed to being stuck in the side lane. But even if you can't, it's not that big of a deal. Just keep marking the enemy champions that are most likely to die in fights, generally they're frontliners and divers, and you'll just keep stacking up. Now, for the build, runes you'll take Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Bloodline, and Coup de Grace with Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For items, you'll start Doran's Blade, then build into Essence Reaver, and next up you'll pick up Berserker's Greaves and Immortal Shield Bow. You'll want Stormrazor and Infinity Edge next, with the order depending on whether you value the slow or the high DPS more. Either way, your last item will be Lord Dominic's Regards. And that wraps things up for our sleeper builds that you're missing out on in patch 11.14. Really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you sub to the channel so you never miss out on our meta guides and you're always in the loop of what the best picks are. Remember to answer our question of the day in the comments down below. And one last thing, you can also check out our Discord through the description box down below too. That's it for today, so best of luck on the Rift, everybody. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.